Beavers were entirely extirpated from the state of Ohio around 1830. The demand that settlers had for both their pelts and the castoreum, the secretion that they make that they use to mark their territory, was nearly insatiable. A good portion of the American West was settled because people came west chasing beaver populations. For nearly 200 years, there were no beaver in Glen Helen. Gradually, over the course of the last 80 or so years, beaver have returned to Ohio, starting in the northeastern part of the state, gradually working their way west and southwest. We've had beaver in the Glen before, on the Little Miami, around Grinnell Mill, but as near as we can tell, this is the first dam on the Yellow Springs Creek in Glen Helen in 200 years. The Beavers started building this dam in April of 2021. So where we are today, it's been just over 3 years. The prevailing wisdom is to get rid of beaver with every opportunity that you have. They flood property, they damage roads, they change the environment in ways that we don't want to see the environment changed. We're a nature preserve, and they are native wildlife, and we wanted to see that we would work around the beaver rather than require the beaver to work around us. They started building the dam in April of 2021, and very quickly it went from 1 foot tall to 2 foot tall to 3 foot tall, and gradually started impounding a larger and larger area. We didn't know how large they were going to make it, but of all the places that they could have put a beaver dam in the Glen, this was an elegant choice. We had an existing trail infrastructure of boardwalks and a bridge, and they positioned the main dam immediately upstream from the bridge on our main visitors trail. So it created this unparalleled educational opportunity where every public program, every kid that comes through the Outdoor Education Center gets to get up close to a beaver dam and look for the beaver in the pond and see the wildlife and habitat changes that the beaver have created.
Oh, let's look to see if we can see the beaver. Can you see him?
If the beaver had truly wanted to play nice with us, they would have stayed within the confines of our existing boardwalk. But they wanted their lodge to be deeper. Beaver want to be able to enter their winter lodge in the winter by swimming under ice. It really shows you how tough they are as animals. And so almost the deeper the better for them. It allows them to afford a level of protection from predators because the beavers are at home in the water. They swim well and fast, and they can hold their breath a long time. It also, a nice deep pond allows them the ability when they drop a tree to be able to float it across the water, so it kind of speeds their work. Beavers are herbivores, so no meats in their diet. A big part of their diet is the cambium, which is kind of the inside the bark of a tree and the part where the tree is actively growing. They like that a lot, but they'll also eat twigs, especially during the wintertime, leaves. They like aquatic vegetation, including roots, so diversity of plant matter. Probably at the main stem of the creek, the dam is probably 7 feet high, impounding 5 or 6 feet deep of water. One of the things that the beaver did was they expanded the area that is wetland. So there are species that like wetlands that were maybe here in small numbers around the Yellow Springs Creek that have now expanded substantially. So in the area right around us, you can see skunk cabbage, which is the first wildflower of springtime. It looks like giant cabbage leaves. Those were here before the beaver dam, but now as you go upstream along the Yellow Springs Creek, you see large areas where skunk cabbage have been able to move in, establish, and we start to see those native wildflowers in a place where the habitat wasn't previously wet enough for them. Water is a scarce resource that is vitally important for life and vitally important that we protect. And wetlands are nature's filters. Not only do they establish habitat where the wetland is itself, but they slow water down, allow it to enter our aquifer, which is where if you go into any area in our local community and you turn on a tap, you're getting water out of the aquifer. So we want water to be able to filter through the land and into the aquifer. In simplest terms, it's a good thing to slow water down. And so much of what human development looks like ends up speeding water up. On agricultural lands, we install drainage tiles, which speed water up. In human settlements, we put in impermeable surfaces like parking lot that speeds water up. Once water enters the Glen and once it enters this wetland, it slows back down. And this basically is doing an ecological service for not just Yellow Springs, but every place downstream between here and New Orleans. There are species that weren't here before. The pond now has bass in it. You wouldn't find those if you went immediately downstream from the dam on the pond. There are birds that are attracted to the wetland habitat that weren't here before. Green heron, which is a small, brilliantly colored heron, much smaller than a great blue heron. Prothonotary warbler nest in cavities in flooded woodlands. We didn't have that here before, but we do now. Some folks call them lemonheads because they're the only Ohio bird that has a bright yellow head. We do a monthly bird walk in the Glen, and this beaver pond has become the trap for us. So we'll come down the steps, and 45 minutes later, we realized we haven't moved from the beaver pond because there's too much to see here. They've created extraordinary habitat with birds that want to access dead and dying trees, birds that want to build cavities in dead trees, birds that appreciate the wetlands. In the time that we've been here talking, we're hearing a state bird of Ohio right now, northern cardinal, Carolina wren, red-bellied woodpecker, Acadian flycatcher. One of the species that I didn't mention that's been in the Glen all along, but the pond has made it so that we see an order of magnitude more of them are wood ducks. Yeah, this is perfect wood duck habitat. They want a pond, and they want a pond with trees that are around it that are large enough. Wood ducks actually nest in holes in trees. And they're pretty now, but when you see the adult male and breeding plumage, they're stunning. There's the lodge here. So beaver are going to enter that lodge by swimming through the water and enter it underwater. And then they'll come up and they'll have dry spaces underneath. And you can see how jewelweed has started to grow on top of it. So it sort of blurs the line between housing and habitat.